Ready to learn something useful today, kid?
Welcome to today's video. I'll be sharing some thoughts about the new movement shooter Empulse, which is currently in early access on multiple platforms. For this video, I will be discussing my experience with the game on the PS5. To be honest, I wasn't planning to share thoughts on this game, but I make impulsive decisions, no pun intended, so here we are, several late nights and $30 later. 1047 Games, who are the devs for Empulse, were also responsible for the portal shooter Splitgate. I enjoyed Splitgate quite a bit and thought it was a decent FPS game. Splitgate was a bit rough here and there, but I had my fun and took it for what it was. Empulse being a new shooter from the same devs, I thought why not give it a whirl. They did something interesting with the portal mechanic for Splitgate, so a movement shooter with mechs made me very curious. Let's also keep in mind this game is currently still in early access at the time of this video, so there might be some things that aren't as polished, but to be honest, I'll still bring them up and discuss them. This game isn't free to play, so especially if you're paying for a product, it's fair to critique it regardless of its finished state. If this were free to play, I'd probably be a bit more lenient and reserve some of my opinions for when the full game is finally released. That being said, I may circle back around in future and do a final review once they say that the game is fully released and in its actual release state. To start with, what is Empulse? The game's website puts it simply: Empulse is a fast-paced 6v6 movement shooter, wall run, grapple, holo jump, pilot mix, and paint your way through freeholds, vertical streets, outmove your opponents, or get outgunned. First impressions when I checked the trailers for this, it immediately brings to mind the Titanfall series. I wasn't really big into either Titanfall games. I had a few matches here and there but couldn't get into it. However, the two basic things I knew about Titanfall were the movement and piloting mechs. Empulse looks like an unofficial fan-made sequel to Titanfall 2, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm also not surprised this is the next game 1047 Games announced. Splitgate was known for its portals, but after playing a while, it was also movement that was really important in Splitgate. The portals were just the main technique to achieve that desired movement. Visually, Empulse is much more polished than Splitgate. Splitgate definitely looks like a free-to-play game. With Empulse, the increase in production value is evident. The mini screens look good, the end-of-match screens look decent, character models look better. This is pretty crucial, especially if it's a game with a price. The first game I played in practice match against bots, I had instant fun. I was about to go to bed that night and decided to play one game, and my eyes ended up wide ready to win a no blinking contest. The movement mechanics feel clunky in isolation, but when used in combination it's pretty fun. For example, just sliding can feel a bit weird if you just perform a slide and go back into a run. However, if you hit a slide into a grapple and then into a wall run, it feels much better and much more fluid. The only thing more fun than chaining movement techniques together is when you manage to get a kill during or after performing movement or evading an enemy trying to chase and or shoot you. For me, it didn't really happen much because I'm pretty trash at the game, but when you do get these moments, you really can't help but want to try and execute it again. That's the gameplay loop right there. Movement, kill, and repeat. Despite how simple it is, I found it to be very enjoyable as there is plenty of variety in the way you can move, and using different guns will dictate your approach to movement as well. Verticality in this game is also very surprising. You can get pretty high up on buildings, and if you're able to maintain that height, you've got a huge advantage over your opposition. There are also mechs in the game, which are an okay feature. I kind of expected the mechs to do a bit more or maybe have some different abilities. They have machine guns, missiles, shields, and ability to do a charged jump or dash. I didn't see it if it does exist as I spent more time on foot wall running, but it would be cool to see mechs that do different things, especially for different game modes like lay down mines, or mechs that can be secured to a location, exchanging mobility for extra HP or something like that, just to spice it up a bit and break the sameness kind of feeling of being in a mech. They've got a decent balance going on with the mechs. The mechs are a game changer and can definitely swing the momentum of a game at any time, but don't feel like they're too oppressive unless there's a skill gap or the enemy team now have 2 to 3 mechs at once. It will be interesting to see how they maintain this balance, as the other problem we could see is the mechs being worthless, and a key feature of your shooter being useless isn't too great for the health of the game. Gunplay feels okay. I wouldn't say the guns feel super satisfying to shoot or get feedback on when you've hit someone. If you've played Splitgate, I'd say the gunplay feels a little similar. Depending on how important gunplay is to you, that will either annoy you immensely or just be tolerable. The one weapon I felt a little bit off with was the shotgun. The shotgun has its bullets behave more like projectiles than a hit scan. I just found this choice to be really weird, as it's mostly because I'm trash, but it also just felt like it threw my aiming off, and unless you're point blank with an enemy, chances are you won't kill them with the shotgun. To be fair, I haven't been able to level it much to get attachments which may improve its performance, but the base shotgun for now feels terrible to me. To unlock more weapons, you have to earn XP and increase increase your reputation level. I think all up it takes about 3 hours more or less of playtime to unlocking almost all weapons at level 8, the last weapon requiring level 23 to unlock. The more you use each weapon, you'll unlock attachments for it, and that can complement and support your playstyle depending on what attachments you choose. An interesting move is Empulse doesn't allow players to have a secondary firearm. Instead, you have one gun, whether that's an SMG, rifle, or pistol, or whatever you want. Then as your secondary weapon, you have a hammer, which is a good decision, I think. Due to the lack of a second firearm, fights are settled pretty quickly, and it encourages players to either fight or flight, and this helps get players circulated through that core gameplay loop more often. I also like the hammer. It feels very similar to Splitgate's BFB. I usually love running life on COD, but for Impulse, I don't know if I could get many kills with the hammer with how quickly people can move, and also the verticality where you can get spotted very easily, so that'll be a bit of a challenge if you're into melee weapons in your FPS games. Alongside your weapons, you can select a paint bomb. These are different types of ordinances you can throw to assist you during the game. Like weapons, more of these types will unlock with your XP level gain. The paint bombs can do things like be an explosive weapon damaging enemies. Another variation can be to slow enemies down or speed you and your allies up, and so on. During my sessions, the game did feel a bit laggy or delayed at some points. This also affected the way gunplay felt, where it felt like an enemy should have died a bit sooner, or like my shots didn't register, and that can make or break the feel of a game, especially one like this where movement is super important. One delay or one movement of confusion can be the difference between surviving a fight or losing, especially where movement can be altered just by a slight adjustment. The feedback and feel need to be accurate and responsive. And again, coming back to the fact that this game is still in early access, I do hope on full release issues like this don't present themselves often or as much as they have in the early access stage, and hopefully are fully resolved by the time this game's fully released. Currently, even with crossplay enabled, there were times it took a decent wait to get to a match. I know this is still in early access, but I'm curious to see if the price has put off some players and whether this game will have a decent player base in the long term. Surprisingly, I haven't really ever got a match for the more mech focused game modes, which is a really big surprise to me. I don't know if that's because the player base don't like the mechs, or maybe if there's some other reason why I'm not getting those particular game modes. No surprise that I found TDM to be highly enjoyable, but also surprisingly to me, the game mode Upload was actually really enjoyable, and I think this mode in particular plays to the best parts of this game and really highlights them. Upload is basically capture the flag. Both teams will have a core to defend at the end of their map. A ball will spawn and both teams will have to fight for control. Each team then needs to get the ball to the enemy side and deposit it into their core. This is where movement is really highlighted, and those that aren't so great at movement can have their part to play in defending the carrier or defending their base. Most of my games in this mode were competitive, with wins or losses only being decided by a hair. Rank mode unlocks at around level 8, which took 3 hours or so to achieve. I didn't give rank a whirl as I'm not playing to really sweat in this game. I've already seen what some people can do in quick play, and I'm not trying to see even sweatier moves in rank where I'm getting sniped from someone flying around the corner at Mach speed while spamming weapon swaps. I do think this game has a great potential to be an esports game. This is fun to play, but I'd also enjoy watching this if someone else were playing and doing some cool movement. Currently, there is an early access rewards battle pass for those that have paid for early access. Rewards seem decent if you're someone who loves being an early adopter before everyone else jumps on the bandwagon. I do like the story that they've tried to create for this new game, and the fact that they try to do a bit of world building to explain why people are fighting each other and running up walls and stuff. They've gone down an equilibrium route. That's a great movie, by the way, if you haven't watched it. And in this world and society, emotions are regulated from birth with microchip implants, so gamers in this world never rage or get salty. At some point, an EMP blast goes off in a part of the city and people's implants no longer work, and now everyone is feeling their feelings with Kaioken times 10 active. This leads to a split between people being rebels against the status quo and those that are loyal to the system or regime. Then there are those that just want to help anyone willing to pay and are neutral. In line with film logic, the powers that be decide that instead of maybe sending aid, to help the people in this part of the city, they just seal it off and just let everyone sort it out by themselves with violence and wall running. To wrap up my thoughts on the game, let's ask a few things. Is early access worth it? Only if you're a Titanfall fan or enjoy playing Pathfinder and Apex or enjoy movement shooters. I bought this for $31.95 New Zealand. To be honest, probably not worth it for me. While I enjoy the early access so far, I'm not in love with this game to the point that I feel compelled to play a match each night. This would be more just something I'll default to when I want a bit of variety or are sick with my usual go-to shooters, which isn't a bad thing, but if this game were either free to play or at max maybe 10 to 15 New Zealand dollars, I think it would have gave excellent value at this point in time. In the long term, $30 may turn into a great investment once this game fully releases, but we'll wait and see. Is this game fun and entertaining? Yes, this game is fun. I like the movement a lot, and it does feel great to chain movement techniques before a kill. I'd say that side of it will do heavy lifting for most people. If you're more into gunplay, I wouldn't recommend recommend this game. Gunplay is alright, but if you're after some real good feedback and response from your shots, you're better off on another shooter. Do you think this will last? I hope so. I can't really recall a movement shooter along the same vein being released in recent memory, so I think people that are fans of the Titanfall games or are fans of movement shooters will be really loving Impulse. I can also see notices in the game where devs requesting feedback from players for new experimental modes and such, and I absolutely approve of that. Getting player buy-in is really invaluable, especially in the early stages of a game's life. Also, like I mentioned before, I do think there will be a competitive scene for this game, and I think there's potential here for this to be a really good spectator-oriented esport game. And those are my thoughts on the Impulse game that's currently in early access at the moment. Please let me know what your thoughts are. If you've played the game, if you enjoy it, why are you enjoying it? If not, why not? And like I said before, I'll most likely also run this back with a review at a later date when they fully release this game. But those are my thoughts for Impulse as it is now. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Off atu.